Better Speaker series is a set of presentations offering instruction on basic speaking skills. Designed to be delivered by members of their clubs, presentations in this series provide new speaking techniques and facts that can help all club members develop their communication skills. Chad Folk has been studying kinesics, the science of body language, for more than 40 years. His first exposure to this subject occurred in the late 70s when, in preparation for contract negotiations, he took his first of many courses concerning the art of negotiation. The most disturbing lesson Chad has learned about body language is that everything you think you know about body language can be used against you by skillful manipulators. Chad is going to use words to describe not using words. Please help me welcome with his educational title, Unspoken Words, Chad Folk.
You lead the clapping. I was in Brazil for work, and we were adding hardware to a board to help filter out some noise that was going on. The client had bought this board. And one of the things they had to do when I got the components, figured out what components we needed to put on and add them to it, we had to add what we in the industry call conformal coding. However, in Brazil, they didn't know what that meant, and I knew that. So here was the first exercise of getting to use some body language to try to communicate with somebody whose second language is English, how to describe a word that's very unique to a very small segment of the industry. Because conformal coding is. So I described the resin that was on the table and the paint that was on the wall. So I'm using my body language to do it. And when finally a guy came along and he brought me an entire drum, and I took my little Q-tip and put it in, drum up the stuff. But when he had got me the right stuff and he was looking to see whether he was pleased, I went, okay. And that's my first clue. I got the first indication that sometimes body language depends on where you are and who your audience is. Because that was the wrong thing to be doing in that environment. That does not mean okay in Brazil. That means something else. It turns out he wanted the thumbs up. You did good. So I switched it and I learned a little bit about communication and body language. And it's not exactly universal. Some people say that it's universal. It's not. So I think the most important thing is know your audience and know what body language will work in that audience. So it's just a real historical little conclusion. Thumbs up, we know it from the Roman days in the Colosseums with the what were the fellows called?
Gladiators?
Gladiators. Thumbs up meant kill him. Thumbs down meant he gets to live. And we've got it reversed. It was the other way around back then. Thumb down meant he gets to live. It was kind of let him live. Kill him. It was a completely different thing. So another factor to consider with body language is the venue. Besides the audience and who they are, the venue you're in. If you're in a small room, this type of a room with certain body language wouldn't work as well as you would need in a larger room or from a stage. Sometimes you might get stuck at a dais behind a table, so body language gets very different there. Or behind a lectern that's huge, sometimes there's no room to step out inside. So you have to check the environment out as well as for where are you going to be using this body language. Now there are three categories of body language. There's facial expressions, there's gestures, and then there's the whole body. So with facial expressions, I'll start with that one. One of the things that's a little misnomer with a lot of people is you've often heard this thing, you look somebody in the eye, if they're lying, they can't look you in the eye. Well, it turns out that the most skillful manipulators, the best con men in the world, actually do look you in the eye because they're watching for your reaction. So this looking in the eye thing, again, it's cultural, it changes around wherever you are, and all the stuff I learned early on about body language, looking up to the left or to the right when you're lying, those can all be faked. every one of those can be faked. They're not true. So the other one, and I heard it here a few weeks ago, was when talking to a large crowd, instead of making eye contact with each individual, look over their heads at the back row or at the back of the room, so you're not. Well, I disagree with that wholeheartedly for two very specific reasons. One, when you look at the back row, the people that are busy on their phones and doing all this stuff are all sitting in the back row, and it's very disruptive if you're looking at that back row, because they're all hiding in the back row and they think they're not seen, but they're the ones seen the most. Notice in school, when you were in school, the teacher put the bad kids at the back of the room because she saw them more often back there, and they didn't disturb the rest of the class, so only she could spot them, right? It was a way of seeing that. So that's the first thing. The other is you want some major feedback from the people with the eye contact. I want to know, are you understanding what I'm saying? And you get that. And it's one of the things we learn here in Toastmasters is, as a listener, we can contribute by using our body language to listen actively. I've learned a great deal about how to sit and listen to somebody, to acknowledge that, yes, I'm listening to you. And it's sometimes it's quite an effort. I actually break out in a sweat. Oh yeah, don't cross, don't do. Oh, what am I doing? Oh, relax, but just engage. So we can practice that part of body language even when being a listener in a room rather than the speaker. So I think a great deal of practice happens. Now in gestures, there's a couple of kinds of gestures. There's conventional gestures that we use for, and we think they're universal, we think they're for everywhere. If I hold my hand up, I mean stop. If I mean the number 2, I can say 2. However, this is another cultural one. We were in Germany, and my father was in a guest house. Now, my father was German extraction, but he was raised in Canada. And every time he did this, they brought 3, because in Germany, the thumb is assumed. And I started thinking about that. When you start to count, when you count to 5. 1, 2, so we do the thumb first. Oh, that's right, so there's a cross mix-up. So again, one must be cognizant of all those things. There's descriptive gestures, just describe the idea you're communicating. Right? You might show how long something is by holding your hands apart. Or you might talk about a square object. So it's a descriptive. You know, we're doing all sorts of things with our arms to physically describe, paint a picture, as it were. There's emotional gestures. When you're angry or you're raising a fist or smiling. And then I think it's universal, is the opening the hands up to show how open we are to everything. Shrugging our shoulders. It's kind of still in the arms, not quite in the body, but we can do many, many things with just gestures, so they count it. Then there's whole body movement. There's posture, stance. One of the things I discovered a while ago, that there's a crossover sometimes between the body and facial gestures. Pro golfers are now taught to, as they're lining up their shot and thinking it through, that they smile. Even a forced smile changes what's going to happen with their body memory. It changes everything. And now if you watch TV, watch pro golfers on television, you'll see every one of them, or the vast majority of them now, standing before each shot and they give a big smile, because that sets the tone for the whole body. And that sets our tone, just much like the posture itself, standing with confidence, doing everything else. Speaking with command of the situation. One of the things I have noticed, I'm a student of what we do here at Toastmasters, and I've gone to a lot of different meetings, and including even at this meeting, and I've noticed a very disturbing practice amongst a number of people, is they overact their body gestures. They're always, and I'd like to say, and it's like, and if you ever seen John Lovitz, you know John Lovitz?
No.
Just a second. Acting. Right? It's overdoing stuff, and we do that often in Toastmasters. I see it often in contests. I see it in everything. And besides, one of the things, if you went to community theater, you get kicked out for it. It's like, that's over the top, it's wrong. Have you ever watched a video and the voice is not timed right to the can you watch it anymore? It drives me nuts. It turns out there's a certain length of time that you can have things off. And when you're acting your gestures, when you're acting them through, the timing is off. There's no congruence to it. I always wonder, what is it? It's a lack of, it's disassociated with what they're saying by just a fraction, but enough to, because it's put in there. It comes across as gimmicky. I'm often disturbed when I see it. There's really a strange thing with this. Why do we do this in the first place? We come to Toastmasters to learn to get rid of our nervousness when speaking in public. And it turns out that if you're trying to remember the gestures to time it with everything else, you're putting much more pressure on yourself. You're putting much, and they measured this scientifically. There's a man by the name of, I've got his name here on Giles, I think, who tested this. That when you're practicing the gestures and trying to put them in, your palms sweat more, your anxiety levels go up. They're worse. The thing you came to Toastmasters for in the first place, you've now exaggerated it. But if it's a conversational tone, the anxiety levels go down. If you're speaking, my suggestion is to make it more like you're talking with somebody in your living room. And speaking of a living room, where in your living room have you ever done those gestures when you're talking with your friends? So bring your anxiety level down by just sticking to natural body language. Let your body do it. The others come across very much as a caricature. Have you ever seen what an artist does where he exaggerates something? You may or may not like it, but it doesn't look like you. Your nose is bigger, your ears are big, whatever. That's exaggerated. And that's what whenever I see somebody doing these body, and they're, the biggest part that they're doing is they're hurting themselves. The other problem that comes when you overemphasize style you end up diminishing the content. What's the speech about? I'm here to learn about how to write speeches and get a point across, not to show you a caricature of an act. I'm listening to the speech. I learn an awful lot from the speeches. I don't learn from your body language. I do learn from the content of your speech. And when you concentrate on I must go here and must go there, you lose track of it. I watched the 3 top winners of the international contest, the Toastmasters International Contest 2 years ago, and all 3 of them were marching around the stage going, what are they doing? First it drove the cameraman nuts trying to follow them, and number 2, where would you ever use that? I'm here to make sure I can use the skills I learned in all environments, not just on a stage, overacting, getting kicked out of a club. I'd like to kind of conclude with, your body communicates as well as your mouth. Don't contradict yourself. Just don't contradict yourself. And the final thing is a quote that I got from, I can't pronounce his name, Brost is his last name. Don't let your body language betray the confidence and sincerity of your words. Be truthful and speak with conviction.